What's going on, guys? Welcome back to my Friday Night SmackDown audio review for June 17th, 2022. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great weekend so far. And on paper, coming into the show, this looked like a very eventful edition of SmackDown. And it ended up being a very eventful edition of SmackDown, unfortunately, for the wrong reasons. Now, I said here on the review that SmackDown last week was a really good show, and I meant that. I actually very much enjoyed the show last week between Riddle and Zayn. We had McIntyre and Sheamus in a very good match in the opener. We had a lot of different things going on that show last week, and it ended up being a very good show overall, and probably, as I said a week ago, the strongest SmackDown of 2022 so far. This SmackDown, on the other hand, will probably get more people talking than almost any other episode so far this year, for just the sheer amount of stuff that happened between the beginning of the show and the ending of the show specifically, between the Vince promo and then the aftermath of the Undisputed WWE Universal Championship match, which I was really looking forward to coming into this show. They announced it a week ago. I was really hyped for Roman and Riddle. It ended up being a great match. Unfortunately, it's ultimately going to be overshadowed by what happened again at the beginning of the show and what happened at the end of the show. So let's get into it. To no one's surprise, after what went down on Wednesday and then again on Friday morning with it being announced that Vince McMahon stepping down as the CEO and chairman of WWE. He will no longer be, in charge of the company officially. He's really just continuing to run the company from the shadows, essentially is what it is. He's still the head of WWE, just without the title involved. I mean, anyone who has known this company long enough and known Vince long enough, he's still in charge of creative. Nothing is really changing on that end. If you watch SmackDown on Friday, that much was evident. Even if Vince wasn't in charge of creative, it would be a nice breath of fresh air, but I can't imagine the shows would be that much better without him at the helm, unless they were to bring in someone that had a completely different creative vision than Vince, that was closer to what we want out of these shows, and he didn't have full approval or any approval over what was being, written and booked and stuff like that. Only then I would think we would see a real change on these shows. Beyond that, though, I just still think the shows are going to be the same no matter what, regardless of what's going on behind the scenes. So we found that out early Friday morning. A press release was sent out around that same time from WWE. I got it myself, indicating that Vince would be appearing on SmackDown. Now, it specifically said Mr. McMahon, which doesn't really mean anything overly important, but typically, as they've said in the past, they've kind of alluded to this in the past, that if they advertise something as a Mr. McMahon appearance, it's kind of in character, where Vince McMahon is the person, Mr. McMahon is the character. The email specifically said Mr. McMahon. So you kind of knew what we were getting there. I didn't get my hopes up. I was intrigued to see what he would say and what would happen and whatever. I figured it would be some sort of like a rallying call, like, oh, we're going to get through this together, because in a nutshell, I spoke about this very briefly on WrestleRant Radio early Thursday, because that was when the details were first coming out, that he was involved in this scandal and this hush money payment for like $3 million to a former employee who signed an NDA. Only did the friend of said person involved in the scandal reach out to WWE anonymously to let them know what was going on and that the person was sexually assaulted and they were involved, I guess, in sexual relationships or whatever with Vince and John. I don't know exactly what's going on here. I'm not exactly sure, but the affair stuff is one thing, but that's not really that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. But the fact that there were multiple NDAs out there and an investigation is underway to kind of figure out exactly what's going on is the problem right now, which is why they really had no choice, and Vince really had no choice but to step down officially, publicly, as the CEO and chairman of the company, to be replaced by Stephanie on early Friday, who had just actually left her position of power about a month ago to go on a self-imposed sabbatical, we were told. She said on Twitter about a month ago. So, whole lot of McMahon family drama in 2022 alone, but specifically in the last couple of weeks. When it comes to Vince and Stephanie, the investigation, the break, and all the shit that's come out about Stephanie since she stepped down temporarily, and now she's back. It's a whole giant fucking mess right now. With that being said, I mean, it looks like the investigation is obviously underway, and they're taking it very seriously, as they should be. Vince, that did not stop him from appearing on the show. All reports from PW Insider indicated that he was in good spirits backstage, probably in even better spirits, because he's not going to show that the controversy is phasing him. Because it never, not that it's not, the man's human, but he's just not going to show it. That's the type of person that Vince is. This has happened before with competition and any other sort of scandal he's dealt with in the past. He's not going to show that he's shaken backstage, because that's just not the sort of person that he is. And that was very much apparent on SmackDown when he came out as business as usual, entrance and all. The entrance probably lasted longer than the promo itself did, and he started the show, and if I'm not mistaken, the promo that he cut lasted all of 40 seconds. It was I say ginormous because it wasn't like a whole bunch of time was wasted, but it was a waste of time. It was a significant waste of time to have Vince out there, people bowing and cheering and usual, which it is a little dumb. And listen, I've been guilty of it. When Vince comes out, you cheer, you boo, or not boo, but you bow and all this other shit. When in reality, we hate Vince for the creative and whatever. I understand that, but as far as the reaction that he got on the show from the people in wherever they were on Friday, Minnesota, I think it was St. Louis. I don't remember exactly. But just the bowing and the cheering, some of that might have been piped in, but to give that man that sort of reaction, even after everything that's come out about him, and I'm sure not everyone in the audience is paying attention to the real, you would have to fucking completely turn off the news to not see what's going on. You don't have to read the wrestling dirt sheets to know what's going on with Vince McMahon right now and the McMahon family. But to give that man that sort of reaction, just amidst all of what's going on right now with him in real life and what he was accused of, to me was pretty stupid. It's pretty fucking dumb. The reaction that he got on the show, the fans are definitely guilty of that. That was pretty stupid. That was pretty stupid. So then he's out there, and again, he cuts this very basic promo saying that, we're in this all together, WWE, that's what it says in the intro, we're in this together or whatever. And then he said, welcome to SmackDown. And then he walked away. At least the brief promo that he cut at the beginning of SmackDown when they went back on the road almost exactly a year ago was somewhat funny when he said, where the hell have you been? And then he walked away. That was stupid and pointless, but at least there was some sort of comedical effect to it. There's nothing funny about what's going on with right now with Vince in real life. So to just ignore the ginormous elephant in the room, to even put the man on TV was stupid. But there's only one reason why they did that, was to get a rating out of it. Whether they did or not, who knows? The fact that they advertised the big championship match for the show and Vince at the start of Friday, which was also said on CNN as well. A lot of news outlets picked up what was going on with Vince earlier on Friday, and they even mentioned in some of these newscasts that Vince would be on his own show SmackDown later on in the night, which ultimately led to absolutely nothing of note happening. Now, I didn't think he would address the situation. I thought he might paint himself as the hero, which is kind of what happened a little bit, not exactly, because he said, we're in this all together, as if we're all a victim of what's going on right now, which is so fucking dumb. But it was just a giant, I can't even say disappointing, because I can't even say I expected much more than what we got. But it was still stupid. It was still embarrassing. And it shows that Vince is probably just not going to change. He's not taking it seriously. And he, kind of took advantage of the situation by putting himself on TV because he knew people were talking about him to get a ratings boost out of it. He didn't even do anything. A complete and utter fucking waste of time, despite how short it was. We had Riddle come out after that, addressing Roman Reigns for the main event. I thought this set up the main event nicely between him and Roman for the championship. Also mentioning that Randy Orton is undergoing significant back surgery or a back operation or whatever very soon. He had made mention of that towards the end of his promo. He played the Orton music, post to it, whatever. So it sounds like this is legit. And I thought for a second maybe they're over-exaggerating the injury so it means more when he comes back either later in the night or next week or before SummerSlam, which would obviously be ideal. Would not be the first time WWE has done something along those lines. That is clearly not the case, especially with what happened at the end of the show, setting up the SummerSlam main event, and we're not even at Money in the Bank yet. It is very obvious that Orton will not be back anytime soon. Now, could it be a case of we need to set up our SummerSlam main event right now? Again, Money in the Bank is not for another 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. I think 2 weeks. I think it's in 2 weeks from now. From today, exactly. They need to set up their SummerSlam main event. We need to do it tonight. Orton's not here. Because we don't know when the next time Roman's going to be around is. He has not been on SmackDown prior to this show in a month. He hadn't been on SmackDown since the Usos became the Undisputed Tag Team Champions on that May 20th edition of SmackDown 4 weeks ago. So, with that being said, we don't know when he'll be back. They probably wanted to set up the match now because they have Brock, they have Roman. Why wait any longer, even though Money in the Bank isn't for another 2 weeks, as I mentioned. And Roman apparently will not be on that show. Brock will not be on that show either. But Orton's not going to be around. He's going to be injured. And could he come back before then? We've seen this before, like when they put the World Championship on Edge back in 2007. When he cashed in Money in the Bank, he took the briefcase off of Kennedy. They did that because they thought Kennedy's injury was worse than it was, and they thought, well, he can't cash in successfully, so let's just put the briefcase and the championship on Edge instead, make him the face of SmackDown, and it ended up being an exaggerated injury, and Kennedy was back like soon after. So, I mean, that's very rare that sort of thing happens. It could have happened. I don't think it is. Whatever Orton is dealing with sounds pretty serious, and he won't be back anytime soon. It's crazy to think he's already been gone for a month, but it sounds like he's going to be gone a little bit longer, which is a shame. But yeah, Orton and Reigns off the table for the SummerSlam main event. We have no idea when he's going to be back, which is a shame. But we did get the new SummerSlam main event made pretty clear at the end of the show, which I'll get to momentarily. Madcap Moss and Happy Corbin one more time, or so we were told. I guess we could always get another match in a week or two from now. In a last laugh match. Now, they kind of build this as the blow-off to the feud, but they did the same thing for the match at Hell in the Cell, the no disqualification, no holds barred, street fight, whatever the fuck you want to call it. And Moss won that decisively. You would think that would have been the end of the feud, but obviously it wasn't. They set up this match as well. It was fine. It wasn't any different than their other encounters. Probably a little less intense because it didn't have a stipulation attached to it. Again, it was called a last laugh match, but there was no other stipulation to the match. It wasn't no DQ. You didn't have to make your opponent laugh or something, which would have been incredibly dumb. It was just a standard singles match, and I guess it was meant to indicate that whoever wins, this is it, and they get the last laugh, so to speak. Oh, a nice pun. So that was that. Moss wins decisively, hit his finisher twice on Corbin, and that was it. The best part of this entire thing, and I really just don't care about Moss, I'm glad they're pushing him, and they're trying something new with someone new, relatively new, although he's been around in WWE for many years now. I remember seeing him at an NXT house show 6 years ago. He's been around forever. And the thing with Moss is that I think he's still relatively young. He's like in his early 30s, I think, if not in his late 20s. So he has his entire career ahead of him. I mean, it's nice they're trying with him. I don't really care personally, but it's worth a shot, I guess. The best part of this entire segment was what happened afterward. Corbin gets on the mic, walks over to Pat McAfee, and brings up all the history, not all the history they have, because they go back to their football days, but he does mention that it was a year ago in the summer of 2021 that it was McAfee who coined the term bum-ass Baron Corbin when Corbin was going through rough times in character. And he was making fun of him, he was making fun of his hairline and all this other sort of stuff, and it was great television. And, even after he hit it big, he continued to rag on Corbin and give him a tough time on commentary. This was not lost on Corbin. Corbin was fully aware of this, and he tried to get back at McAfee here and walk off. But then McAfee kind of stood up from the commentary desk and took a shot at Corbin, had the entire audience laugh Corbin out of the arena. And that was it. So McAfee's great with this sort of stuff, and honestly, it's hard to get excited about anything involving Corbin at this point just because they've portrayed him a certain way, and a lot of the characters they have him do, he gives it his all. But, I mean, some of these feuds just drag on fucking forever, and it's hard to care. But a McAfee-Corbin feud, to be completely honest, might have potential. That could actually be entertaining, and McAfee had such a great showing at WrestleMania that I'm not at all surprised they probably want to put him back in the ring again. Very likely for a SummerSlam match. We had the main event of SummerSlam announced for this show, or not announced on the show, but it was announced on social media soon after. At the end of SmackDown, this could very well be setting up a SummerSlam match as well between Moss and Corbin. So I'm honestly on board with that. I think that could be entertaining. And Corbin is the perfect person for McAfee to be beating. And if McAfee loses, it's not that big of a deal. So I'm fine with it either way. SmackDown needs something. This show sucks overall. So they need some sort of shot in the arm. And not that that's going to be the World Championship program by any means, but it could be something for the undercard to be entertaining. So I'll take whatever it's worth. I'll take it for whatever it's worth. We had the New Days, Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods taking on Jinder Mahal and Shanky in tag team action. A complete throwaway match. It was fine for what it was while it lasted. Jinder and Shanky lost again after Shanky's dancing distracted Jinder. New Day wins. The best thing I can say about this match is that it wasn't New Day and Brawling Brutes for the upteenth time. That's probably the best thing I can say about it. Beyond that, this was a nothing match. The Jinder and Shanky stuff, I don't give a fuck, and Kofi and Xavier are kind of stuck in this weird kind of holding pattern right now until they can find something new to do. And I hope that does not involve the tag team titles. We've already seen them in the Usos a million times as recently as like 5 months ago. I have no desire to see that again. So I don't really know what you do with them, but I proposed maybe you put Xavier in the Intercontinental Championship picture. You put Kofi in the IC title picture. You could put them, as laughable as this may sound, towards the main title picture. I know Roman's busy with Brock right now, so I guess that's not going to happen, but running back Roman and New Day, which we didn't really see the full-fledged feud for late last year. We kind of saw it a little bit on SmackDown, but it never really had a proper culmination. Woods beat Roman by DQ one-on-one. One of the first people to do that since Roman turned heel 2 years ago. And they have yet to go back to that. So I wouldn't mind that. But again, since Roman's busy with Brock, that's probably not going to happen. We had Adam Pearce in the ring after that announcing both Sheamus and Drew for the men's Money in the Bank ladder match in a couple of weeks. Sheamus was in there. Drew was in there. Drew ended the segment by laying out Sheamus with a Claymore. This was fine. This stemmed from Sheamus and Drew, as I mentioned, I think earlier. I don't remember, but because I thought SmackDown last week was great. Sheamus and Drew in the opener was really good. That ended in a double DQ, and it was a men's Money in the Bank qualifier. So neither man qualified, and I figured it would set up a no DQ match between the two this week to determine who was qualifying, who was advancing to the Money in the Bank ladder match. And we didn't get that. They just announced both men for the match instead, probably due to the fact that SmackDown's roster depth sucks, and they don't have many other people to put in the match. I mean, listen, I like Ricochet. Ricochet could always end up in the field, but it's like, I'm not sure how many people would actually care about Ricochet being in the match at this point, since we know he's very, very, very likely not going to win. Sheamus and Drew, say what you will, they're both two former world champions. I really don't have much of a desire to see either guy win the briefcase at this point, but they're two bigger stars, and they have probably more of a chance to win than fucking Ricochet, so them being in the match doesn't bother me. I just thought this could have been set up better. Since it's not like they both won the match last week, they both were losers. So the fact that they would both qualify as opposed to just to determine, who would qualify between the two of them in a rematch, I don't know. Other than the fact that in a realistic standpoint, a realistic sense, SmackDown has no stars for the most part, and they need both men in the match because they don't have many other options. And again, I like people like Kofi and Xavier, but listen, I would rather have fresher faces in this match. Kofi's not exactly a fresh face. He's been around for a decade and a half pretty much, but Drew and Sheamus have more of a chance of winning than they do, so I can't say I'm exactly opposed to what they did here. Raquel Rodriguez qualifying for the women's Money in the Bank ladder match with a win over Shayna Baszler on the show. I think this was a first-time ever encounter. I could be wrong. The match was fine. Raquel won, like I said. Could have been better, knowing what both women are capable of. Two former dominant NXT Women's Champions kind of reduced to a nothing match on SmackDown. That is entirely due to the fact that Shayna means absolutely nothing at this point. How anyone could possibly care about this woman, I have no idea. She has been just reduced to just another woman on the roster, and they tried again with her very briefly late last year with that mini push they were giving her, and that was great to see, but it ended up going nowhere. And she was quickly reduced back to being a stepping stone for other women. So it's a shame. I mean, I still am intrigued about the possibility of a Shayna and Ronda match at some point. We really haven't seen them interact a whole lot since Ronda came back. I think in the Women's Rumble and then again in the Women's Tag Team match a few weeks ago, but that was about it. Shayna winning the briefcase and teasing cashing in on her former or current friend, whatever, and storyline, I'm not sure where they stand. Would have been very interesting, but again, no one gives a fuck about Shayna. She should have won the briefcase. She should have won the briefcase 2 years ago. And they've done absolutely nothing of note with her since. And winning the tag team titles does not count because those things were fucking paperweights before they were very likely discontinued recently. So anyway, I can't say I'm surprised that she lost. Raquel winning makes sense. She's the one they're pushing right now anyway. She's good, so I don't have much of an issue with this. Two things though, real quickly. Sasha Banks was apparently officially released from WWE the other day. I mean, I heard from another source, from like a Reddit user, I think that has insider information, that she was actually released weeks ago at WrestleVotes, backed up the Raj Giri report from Wrestling Inc. on Friday in a tweet saying that he had heard the same thing, or they had heard the same thing. We don't know if it's a man or not, but they had heard the same thing, and that Sasha was indeed gone from the company. So in an update on what I said on Thursday, that Sasha could be gone. It looked like she might have been gone. There was no confirmation at any point on Thursday, it seemed like, but it sounds like on Friday. Not that it's been made official by WWE. Maybe it could be soon via a graphic, who knows, that she's no longer there. So I can't say I'm surprised. If her contract was coming due, you would think she would just wait, but she probably just wants out now. She had her lawyers involved reportedly, so it doesn't look like she's going to be back on SmackDown anytime soon. I mean, it is possible she ends up coming back in the near future. I don't see that happening personally. She'll probably just go off and do other shit. Maybe not even necessarily wrestle. Even AEW probably wouldn't be the best landing spot, given how they portray and book their women, but that's just me. The other thing I want to discuss real quick before the main event here, we're supposed to have, the big debut of Max Dupree as he would say, his Maximum Model Agency with his first client. He said his first client last week, but he made it sound like here he had two. And they had the lights on in the ring, but then they were shown he was shown backstage talking to Adam Pearce way too close again, saying that the circumstances weren't right, the music and the lighting wasn't right or whatever. So he's going to hold off. So in typical WWE fashion, we again did not find out who was the first client or first two clients, multiple clients of Max Dupree. This sounds like the typical WWE bullshit where they'll continue to drag something out to the point where people don't care. And a lot of people currently just don't care. I mean, this shit sounds stupid. The former LA Knight's going to make it work to the best of his ability, and that's great. I'm sure he'll knock it out of the park if we even get to that point. But there's a very real chance they drag this on far enough to where they just forget about it themselves and there is no payoff. And the guy gets released before there is even a payoff. I mean, we've seen people return before, like Aleister Black, and then get released 2 weeks later, even when he closes the show attacking one of their top stars in Big E. So we have seen this shit before. I would not put it past them. I hope that doesn't happen. But they've done this before with Emelina. They did it with Veer Mahan, and that turned into a meme, and it was kind of funny by the end there, but it's definitely not ideal to continue to promote something and then it doesn't happen. It's going to get to a point where we just don't believe the company anymore, or we just don't care. And again, this is already a gimmick that people don't give a fuck about, so this is not the best approach to take. But we get to the main event for the Undisputed WWE Universal Championship, Roman Reigns versus Riddle. Now, the stipulation was added on Monday's Raw that if Riddle lost here, he can no longer challenge for the championship as long as Roman is champion. So that was the stipulation here. I had no faith at all in Riddle. I don't think anyone really did. No one expected him to win, and obviously he didn't. But he gave it a good fight. What I did expect coming into this match, though, was that it would be a very good match. And that's exactly what it was. This was a great main event, especially down the stretch when they picked up the pace and Riddle had the crowd eating out of the palm of his hand. And I'm just thinking, eating out of the palm of his hand, that is. I was just thinking while watching the latter half of the match how well Riddle's been booked overall since coming up from NXT. Now, there was a period there, like in early 2021, when he was booked like a fucking goof. And he still is a goof, but he's a goof that's over, and he has credibility, having picked up important wins and taken certain people to the limit. And, the RK Bro stuff really salvaged his career in this company. Otherwise, he would have just been just another mid-carder. But he's had a great run over the last year, and he's really, really popular right now. Obviously, you weren't going to put the championship on him on a random SmackDown, but could he be a future world champion in this company? I don't see why not. If they break up the championships again, I don't see why not. But yeah, I thought this was great. There was one really, really close near fall, which, had people, it even had me convinced that maybe Riddle might win. But, shame on me for thinking that, I guess. But I forgot what it was exactly. I think it was the RKO out of nowhere. Roman hit the spear. He was going for the spear. Riddle reversed, but not a great-looking RKO. Leave it to Randy Orton, but I appreciate the tribute nonetheless. And Roman kicks out at like 2 7/8. That was great. In the end, Riddle was going to fly off the rope for like a disaster kick-looking whatever off the middle rope. Roman catches him in midair with a beautiful-looking spear, and he wins it 1, 2, 3. So Roman retains. There was still a few minutes left in the show. And honestly, I didn't expect anyone to come out because they pulled this shit before with Roman at WrestleMania, at Survivor Series, and all these other shows where he says, oh, there's no one left. He celebrates, and then the show ends in disappointing fashion without us finding out who was next. And we've been spoiled before by the returns of John Cena and Brock Lesnar and Money in the Bank last year in SummerSlam, with us thinking, oh, maybe someone else will emerge to challenge Roman Reigns. Especially if we're not going to see Roman again until around SummerSlam, which granted isn't that far away. It's in like late July. It's in like 5 or 6 weeks. But I'm still thinking, okay, we're not going to see him again for a while. They're probably not going to announce his next challenger for another couple of weeks, probably until after Money in the Bank. But sure enough, we did find out who was next for Roman. It's not happening at Money in the Bank, and it wasn't anyone that I hoped it would be, but rather Brock Lesnar, who we have not seen since WrestleMania. Now, we probably knew Brock was coming back soon. He wasn't done with the company after WrestleMania. We kind of figured he'd be back around SummerSlam, especially now that Orton's out, Cody's out. They need the star power. I mean, what a concept to build up your own talent. They're not going to do that. I just wrote a whole article the other day today, for Bleacher Report for today, talking about how there's a lot of people on the roster right now that they could attempt to push as a fresh face in either Raw or SmackDown, male or female, in the absence of Sasha, Cody, Roman when he's not around, Orton, and all these other people. Brock obviously is not a fresh face. I'm not saying Brock should go away forever. His last run with the company was fucking great, honestly. He was on TV almost every week. He was very entertaining. He had some quality matches. I enjoyed the Roman feud overall and the storytelling there with the whole Paul Heyman aspect of it, that aspect of the storyline. but I didn't want to see it revisited ever again. You know, I'm content with never seeing another Roman and Brock match, but unfortunately, that's exactly where we're fucking going into SummerSlam. Again, we are getting Roman and Brock. Brock came out here, he laid out Roman with an F5, and that was it. So, and then it was announced on Twitter soon after that it's going to be a last man standing match at SummerSlam between the two for the championship, which is incredibly disappointing. Now, I know Roman said, oh, there's no one left, and blah, 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 which is kind of a shoot. He's beaten a majority of the roster by this point, but it's not exactly true. I mean, there are a few people on both brands that are waiting in the wings to challenge Roman Reigns. Rollins isn't exactly, not that he's not credible, but I mean, the man just lost to Cody Rhodes 3 times. He probably should not get a title shot anytime soon, unless he wins Money in the Bank, which is pretty likely at this point, which I'll get to in a moment. Same thing with AJ Styles. I mean, AJ's lost a lot lately, but you have Bobby Lashley, who's won a lot lately, and he could be facing Roman at SummerSlam. It's not the biggest marquee match, not as much of a marquee match as Brock and Roman, but we've seen the match a million fucking times. And honestly, what else you do with Brock if he's not in the title picture, I really don't know. But that's where your creative team comes in. You get creative. He doesn't always have to be in the championship picture. He has been in the title picture consistently for like 4 fucking years. He hasn't had like a non-title match in any of these shows in like 4 or 5 years. It's ridiculous. So they need to move on from Brock in the title picture. It's just, I don't want to see Brock as champion again. I honestly get the feeling he might beat Roman 2 years removed from when Roman almost became champion in late August. Because I just don't see a scenario where Brock loses again. Unless, and I don't want to see, here's the problem. Rollins could win Money in the Bank and he could cash in, but I don't want it to be midway through the match again. Like, this time you would really have to redo it, do what they should have done at WrestleMania this year, and make it a formal triple threat. That's what I would do personally. But I guess we'll see as we go along. But it was certainly an eventful show, if nothing else. So we'll talk more about this next week here in my SmackDown audio review for June 17th, 2022. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. And we'll be back next week with more SmackDown thoughts.